Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on a Friday night to watch an excellent film. I am thrilled to welcome you on behalf of the Center for American Progress. We are a nonprofit policy institute that works to improve the lives and conditions for everyone in America. And we are thrilled to be supporting the DC DOX Festival. We are doing this as part of our Real Progress series, which is a film series at CAP that has been in existence for about 20 years and focuses on shedding light on policy issues in a way that white papers, reports, and the really great work we do really can't. It's hard to convey the magic that a story can. So we are honored to be hosting a screening of an excellent film, The Bitter Pill, after which we will be joined by a few folks in the movie, and we'll also be joined by the director. So you will get to meet Tweel, Paul Farrell Jr., and Michael Fuller. So we're very much looking forward to that conversation afterwards, during which time we'll be joined by my colleague Mariam Rashid, who can bring some policy expertise to the discussion as well. So I'm going to stop talking now and pass the mic to Sam Plakin, who is a manager of the DC DOX Film Festival, to give us a welcome before the film begins.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to tonight's screening. It is part of the second annual DC DOX Film Festival, and we're just thrilled that you made it out. Today is the first full day of DC DOX. We are going to continue to have screenings all tomorrow, all Sunday. I think I got my days right. And we are just going to be nonstop with lots of programming. So if you enjoy this film and you'd like to learn about other films in our lineup, please visit dcdocsfest.com, where you can learn all about the other films in our lineup. I quickly want to thank some of our sponsors. We have our major sponsors, Artemis Rising Foundation, Humanities DC, and the Perspective Fund. Also, our sustaining sponsors, the De Novo Initiative, Tangled Bank Studios, Hulu, National Geographic, Netflix, and Warner Brothers Discovery, and of course, our founding media sponsor, The Washington Post. And absolutely want to give a massive thank you to the Center for American Progress for being our host tonight, and just wonderful partners all around. Yeah, I think with that, I will remind you to silence your cell phones and step aside and let you enjoy the film.
I'd like to open it to our audience to see if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask of anyone up on stage.
While we wait, can I just add to that? So we're now also seeing another wave of opioids coming up. Fentanyl has passed, but now we're seeing synthetic drugs. So it's unfortunately not over. We're going to continue seeing waves of different types of drugs coming up, and then we have to also change and adapt policy and prevention efforts as a result of that.
I'm wondering, have the distribution companies, McKesson and them, have they started to take responsibility, though? Are they trying to stop the drug mills down the line, or are they just still taking their advice from the 80-year-old judge and going, it's not my problem?
So, yes, they are becoming more regulated. There's more visibility now in what they're doing and what they're distributing. Obviously, the litigation has shined a bright light on what they were doing for decades. So, and Paul may disagree with me. I worked up the Cardinal case specifically. I think they've made some significant changes, so things are better, but the system's still fractured. I mean, we've learned so much, and I've learned so much about how our healthcare system is, for lack of a better explanation, jacked up, and how everybody has their hands in it. That the focus now of the opioid litigation, which is still going on, is the PBMs, the pharmacy benefit managers, who raked hundreds of millions of dollars out of this industry for not doing anything. So to answer your question, I think, yes, it's gotten better. But there's still a long way to go.
Have you had any support from people in the film industry, the media, people who were aspiring actors, actresses that were hooked on drugs by the movie companies. I'm thinking of Judy Garland, where they would give her drugs to stay awake and then give her drugs to put her to sleep. And there's other cases of actors and actresses that have become addicted to drugs because of these corporations, in effect.
I mean, we, as the filmmaking team, we were focused on the litigation in particular and trying to make more of a, just focusing on the issue at hand with these lawsuits and not go out and, there's many different versions of this movie that could have been made and could go down many different rabbit holes, but we tried to keep it pretty focused singularly on these guys and this case. And we're just now, this is the second place we've premiered, and so we have, we're trying to push it out there. Maybe those conversations will come down the road as the film gets more exposure.
Hi, thank you for a very interesting movie. My name is Sarai, I'm from Amsterdam. And I was wondering, the opioid crisis is of course also an international crisis. And this was a very America-specific lawsuit, of course, but do you have any advice of how we can take this forward internationally? Have there been examples, or yeah, how do you envision that?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So I've spoken with people in Germany, in Italy, in Canada, and each of the, and this is a good policy thing to think about, each of their experiences is a little different. And it's not because opium is different. It's because from a policy standpoint, each of the countries have addressed their healthcare systems differently. All that being said, I want to be careful about how I say this. Nowhere else in the world did the Sackler family run rampant like they did in the United States. Nowhere else in the world did we incentivize doctors and pharmacists across the country to financially gain by the volume of opium pills that were sold in communities across the country. So it was a perfect storm, and from a policy standpoint, we've made substantial changes. And there's some interesting questions on federalism, right? Is the federal government thought about getting in and putting limits on the amount of drugs that could be sold? The states pushed back and said, that's not your job. And so, there are some substantial policy questions built in there. Kentucky was one of the first states to come out and pass a law that say doctors can't prescribe more than X number of pills a day. The doctors came back and said, you're practicing medicine. And Kentucky came back and said, yeah, that's because you're not. And so there's a sea of policy change that's happening. That being said, the Sackler family, as you probably have read, there's a United States Supreme Court case pending. We thought it was going to come out yesterday. It hasn't come out yet, but the Sackler family is seeking absolution with the Purdue Pharma bankruptcy. They've shifted most of their assets overseas and took their investments in Purdue Pharma, and they are in Malaysia right now. So they own the largest chain of Munda Pharma, and so I wouldn't be surprised if the next iteration shows up in Southeast Asia.
I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions.
In praise of the film, this reminded me somewhat of Spotlight, that except, it's real people and not a fictionalized. So my kudos to the filmmaker. One name we didn't hear, and one that I always connect with West Virginia, is Joe Manchin. And I wondered if he had any either aid or or help to your case. And secondly, I'm wondering—
The answer is no.
Oh, okay. All right. Secondly, I was wondering, with all the publicity over Hunter Biden, do you think that may or may not have engendered some sympathy to a similar kind of drug issue?
Yeah, I mean, I would obviously stay away from the politics that's related to that. What I can tell you is this, is that at some point in time, when you take opium, it changes your brain. And it is, when you look at the definition of an addict in the federal code, it is a person that can no longer make that decision themselves, right? They've lost the voluntary choice. And so, when I read about the high-profile victims that are in the newspaper, I feel unfortunate for them that they wound up in the newspaper, but I also am reminded that I don't have to go very far down my street to find examples like it as well.
I was going to make a similar point, which is to say probably many people in this room are related to or love someone who has struggled with addiction to prescription drugs. And the more common that becomes, the harder it is to ignore for any policymaker.
There's a bunch of more questions. And if we get cut short, I'm happy to stick around afterwards and answer any questions you have.
So informative on so many levels. But I want to go maybe off topic a little bit, because I think that you pulled back the curtain on the attorney generals and or the aspiring
please,
governors.
let's talk about that.
And that's
loved
something
that
that I
line.
think that most people, even when we read and are so deeply engaged in this problem, aren't aware of. So have you pulled back the curtain on any other industries in scope and scale and the politics behind? I didn't realize the motivation and the sheer evilness of how of how the particular states respectively were able to allocate those dollars and manipulate the process. And I'm wondering whether it's the farm industry, whether it's climate, whether have you been able to scale this in any way?
I'll just jump one real quick and say that through my research, I think it was 5% of the over $200 billion settlement that the tobacco had went to actual aiding and abetting smoking and lung cancer and things like that. It basically went to filling potholes and whatever the attorney generals wanted. So that was the thing that they were trying to avoid the whole time.
So I think what you're asking about is, this was a narrow, deep dive in one particular industry, and you're asking whether or not there's other examples of it. Right. Yeah, so maybe this is how I want to answer your question. I'm going to rephrase your question.
Non-responsive.
Non-responsive. What I found the most shocking is how the industry was able to neuter the DEA. I was shocked. There's an actually 60 Minutes episode about it. There's a guy named Joe Ranazisi. There's a book about it. It was shocking to me that the DEA attempted in 2006 to take a full frontal assault on this particular problem. And what happened with it was a full frontal congressional press. It was hearings in the Senate. It resulted in Joe losing his job at the DEA. And the power the industry has still is a policy consideration that we should all be very, very aware of.
Hold on. Go on one more on your policy issue about the AGs. Understand how this all started. Paul's AG in West Virginia screwed the pooch and settled the distributor cases for about less than $100 million. That's what caused Paul to get pissed to find another way to bring these cases. He starts bringing the cases. He asked me to join him. Long story short, I first told him no, and then he sucked me in unfairly. But we started filing all the city and county cases. That's when the AGs decided to get involved, and they were wholly pissed. Now, the policy issue is, since this litigation started and has started to die down, states are now trying to enact laws to prevent cities and counties from bringing the suits, giving all the powers to the AGs. It's insane. It's insane. Big tobacco, no one had this idea. That's why I originally said no to Paul, because I thought it was crazy that all these individual counties across the nation would bring this type of suit on a public nuisance theory. But it worked, except for Judge Faber. It worked.
And the attorney general that did that in West Virginia, his wife was a lobbyist for Cardinal Health.
Yes.
Oh,
And now he's running for governor
wow.
in West Virginia. So I think the policy issues, stripping away the power of individuals or localities to bring this type of litigation that maybe for political reasons an AG doesn't want to step into. So it has to be, from the time I started practicing law, which has been over 20 years now, yeah, over 20 years, it's like we're limiting everybody, including the individuals as well as entities, to bring cases against these monstrosities, particularly in the pharma realm.
If you want to read a book on this, it's called Death Comes to Mudlick, and it's a book written by the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist from West Virginia that broke the original story on what happened in West Virginia. It's a fantastic read.
I second that book.
Okay, I think we have time for this. This will be our last question, but before we get to it, I just want to ask everyone, when the discussion's over, before you leave, if you can please pick up your trash and throw it in the trash cans on your way out.
Hi, my name is William Ferreira with the Center for New Liberalism. I have 3 quick qualifying questions, only one-word answers, and then an actual full question. So number 1 is, how long up to this point have you been working on this case?
7 years.
How long before you have gotten any money from this case?
7 years.
And have you made any money from this case?
I'm doing just fine.
Okay. So the only reason that we know what we know seems to be because of your maniacal kind of dedication to accountability. And it wouldn't be that way if you didn't have that. So I think this documentary shows a lot more about our judicial system and how do we fix it so that, you know, you don't need one lawyer working for 7 years without pay to bring these issues to light, to make the small person succeed.
I appreciate what you've said. I want to kind of put this in context a little bit. Our judicial system isn't perfect. I've never seen a better one. That's number 1. Number 2 is that's the beauty of America. It does just take one person with an idea and a maniacal obsession to accomplish it. But it also is because of the relationships that we have, right? Is I get to meet people like Mike Fuller, right? I get to share an idea and that other people get to join me, and I get to find others that are truly interested in making a difference in the world. And that's how every great idea that's ever happened here has happened, right? Somebody comes up and says, I'm going to take a stand. Now, I was lucky is I had a wife that understood this walking into our marriage, that I have a little OCD in me. And I got a little hillbilly in me. And so, you know, it's one of those things that it is that easy sometimes, right? You have to take a reflection of your life and decide what pathway you want to take. And I could have taken several different directions 7 years ago, and for whatever reason, it led me down this path.
Well, that was a wonderful point to end on, and I know that thank you for offering to stick around to answer more questions. I want to thank all 3 of you again, and your team, and your wife, your families, for the support that they've given you throughout the duration of your work and beyond this documentary. And thank you so much, Clay, for making this film and for sharing it with us. We are so appreciative of your work. Keep fighting the good fight. We're here to try to enact the kind of policy changes necessary so that we avoid being in this situation again. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and I hope you all join me in giving them a round of applause again.